We're talking to students to see just how much they know about what actually happened on September 11th and if they think that their schools are doing a good enough job of teaching what happened on that tragic day. So do you know what major anniversary is coming up this weekend?
I do not know.
No, I don't think so.
I'm definitely not really sure what's going on this weekend.
I have no idea.
This coming weekend, not Labor Day.
Yeah.
I do not.
I do not.
No.
Not off the top of my head.
No, I'm not aware.
No, we do not personally. Nope.
We're going to devote our energies to sports and gardening, all the cultural pursuits as far as they're concerned. In fact, we're going to put the goons to sleep. Meanwhile, we dig.
Greetings and welcome to the Anadromist. This is Burn Power coming to you on a beautiful day here in Tbilisi. It's been quite nice out there. We have hit the warm weather, but we haven't hit the boiling hot weather yet. And that's quite nice. I think I've only turned the air conditioner on once so far, and that was today. And that was for basically 10 minutes just to kind of get rid of some residue heat from cooking, and life is good. The warm weather is coming, but meanwhile, we enjoy this. So we'll add May to my list of months that I really appreciate here now. Well, this is going to be the first of two parts on history. The first is called Why We Don't Understand History, and the second will be recommendations on books of history that I have really appreciated. And I think you're going to find this interesting because we're all involved in this thing. Your perspective, however you're looking at it, whatever your age, is coming out of very specific times. When you look back at the past, you see it through your eyes, which are filtered by your times. And so once you understand what constitutes your times, you can look back in the past and then begin to have some sense of understanding that, my times are different than their times. We have this prejudice, they have that prejudice. It's not that simple, but you'll get it. So, before we begin, let me just remind you the usual things. Hey, you need to subscribe to the channel. And if you can't, why can't you? Well, I had one guy get in touch with me through email a couple days ago, a guy named Taylor. He doesn't have a YouTube account, so he just wrote me. Well, that's good. And so if you can't subscribe for that reason, just go ahead and, you can get in touch. The email address is in the link below. Like it. That helps people find it. Share it. That helps even more. Hit that bell notification icon. That helps you know when I drop things, since sometimes I'm irregular. And that would be good. Also, I really do need help with the channel, support-wise. So if you really want to help, there's a PayPal link below, and you can give whatever you choose. And if you give $25 or more, and you write the word book while you're doing it, I will send you a copy of my 3 motions, small little booklet of puppet plays that I wrote, very odd little affairs, but you could put them on if you get in touch with me and say, hey, Bern, can we do this? I will probably say yes, because I doubt I'm ever going to make any money on it before my demise. And what else? Well, if you feel like even giving more and want a tax-deductible receipt, there's the GoFundMe link is still active. And why is it still active? Because it is, and you'll see all this money there, but that's from like 2 campaigns. And there will be another one. So let's discuss why we don't understand history. And I say we. You have to train yourself to look at the past. We have a myopic vision of the past, which has only been increased 1,000-fold by recent technology. And the Zoomers, the Gen Z, these are dumb names, aren't they? have been afflicted by this more than anyone else. People often will point out all these words that the Gen Z folk use. And I think part of the reason for that is because they're constantly staring in their screens. Unlike the people of the modern era, which died sometime in the late 20th century, these people no longer look to the past for their inspiration. They are caught replying to emails, replying to social media, watching things happen, getting caught on TikTok, getting caught with social media, watching the ever-present feed of scrolls. This happens especially if you're interested in politics, but also if you're interested in almost anything else these days. And so they're so stuck that they will look at something like, I work with, have worked with recordings for a good chunk of my life. And so, they were called LPs. Later they were called vinyl LPs. But it's like the Zoomers were just looking at now, and they just started calling them vinyls, which drives anyone older than like about 35 insane. Because it's like, guys, phonograph records, vinyl, LPs, 45s. We already have all the language for that. But I understand. The younger people today are only looking at now. When they see something like that, it's new to them, so they have to come up with a word for it. And someone heard, oh, it's like vinyl LPs. They're like vinyls. You get vinyls. And I hear this with other things too. We are caught in the present. This is one hallmark that we are no longer in the modern age. Every aspect of the modern age, look back to ages before it, or periods or decades or centuries, and got inspiration from it. Whereas we are trapped in this hamster wheel of the present. So what are some of the things that prevent us from understanding history? And this is true for everyone. For one thing, we tend to think that people in the past think just like us. On sexual ethics, their sense of self. I've heard people say if Jane Austen were brought into the present, she would become a modern feminist, maybe a lesbian, which is complete hogwash. That person would not be Jane Austen. Jane Austen was a Christian. She had a very definite sense of moral principles, which is one of the reasons why we like reading her books, because they aren't us. But the point is, and I see this with the fandoms, and Jane Austen is a good person to point this out. The fandoms tend to want to bring her into the present, whereas I think we should bring ourselves back into the past. If you really want to understand people back in the past, for instance, there was a Lost in Austin, I think it was, a two-part series of a girl from the 20th century or early 21st century going back into Jane Austen's place and exchanging places with her. And of course, Jane Austen just becomes a normal modern person. She says, finally, I'm free, I don't want to go back there. But the girl in the past kind of acts like an idiot because she doesn't get the rules, and for her, rules don't matter that much. She doesn't get any sense of hierarchy and such. But in the end, of course, the way this works in modern entertainment is that we always have to prove our time to be superior to the past. So that's what ends up happening in the film, is that there's this kind of wink. It's like, yeah, wouldn't it be great to be in Jane Austen's time? But the matter of fact is, well, we like having the lack of rules about the self that we have now. That's only an illusion. But, for instance, you wouldn't go back to Jane Austen's period with the kind of post-evolution idea we have about sexual ethics. And that post-evolution idea we have really affects how we look at it, which is one of the things that causes me to challenge the evolutionary model for human behavior, because it changes how we think about being human, and not necessarily for the better. Same is true with the sense of the self. We have a sense of self that is very isolated, and we'll come to talking about that a bit more in a moment. We also think people act like us in the past. That, when it comes to things like sex, work, sports, that these things were all basically just less technological versions of what we do ourselves. And this couldn't be further from the truth. The way a person, say, walked in the Middle Ages down the dirt road, because they didn't have any paved highways, was very different from the way you walk down a road. When you walk down a road, look at yourself. You walk off to the side on a pavement or a sidewalk. They walk down the center of the road. They saw things very differently. And if you get into the center of a road someday and start walking down it and don't stay on the side, I mean, if you're on an empty enough road, you'll see that in itself is very different. It's a whole different perspective. Their sense of reality was not your sense of reality. And if Owen Barfield is to believe, their reality was different than our reality because we all interact in a kind of Heisenberg principle way with everything around us. So we are much more isolated. They were much more connected to the world around them. Now, you can really see this the way we label things. And you'll see that people talking about, this is particularly true with all the LGBT plus stuff. People will talk about the LGBT people in the Middle Ages or in ancient Rome. There is no such thing. Did people have what we would now call gay or homosexual or lesbian relationships? Undoubtedly. But they didn't have this system of belief that goes with this. I've seen this radically shift in my lifetime. In the 1970s, if you asked the vast majority of gay men if they were born that way or if it was something that happened in relationship to their families, they would say it was something that happened in relationship to their families. It was only in the 80s when the propaganda became really strong that you had to say it was an innate, inborn condition, that there was no choice involved, that the model for it changed. Now, before that period, for instance, even the word gay, that's like a 20th century thing, mid-20th century. The word homosexual wasn't invented. It was invented by a German psychologist with the last name of Kraft-Ebing. And he used the word homosexual for the first time. So what were they before that? If you read Marcel Proust, he called his own sense of it as inverts. It was an inversion of things. But if you go back to ancient Greece, all the rules don't apply. And if you know anything about Greek sexual ethics, you'll know it was much more complicated than there were these gay people over here and these straight people over here. Their sense of sexual identity was much more based in society rather than in their sense of identity. So when we look in the past, we label people. We label them the way we think they are. For instance, what good does it do to talk about capitalism in the Middle Ages? It didn't exist. It wasn't such a thing. And is everything now capitalist? No. There's a lot of things that are very commercial that aren't capitalist per se. Commercialization is a very different kind of thing. People will often use words like commodification and all of this. But if you go back into the past, these eyeballs don't work the same way. Owen Barfield once pointed out, it doesn't make any sense to apply our sense of the self to the people in, say, medieval Scotland. And he points out one guy in a Walter Scott novel set in the Middle Ages where the subservient man, the lesser man, looks to his laird, his lord, and says, I would cut my bones for him. What does that mean in relationship to capitalist market economics? Nothing. This is a different kind of relationship for a very different kind of people. Now, one thing we can say is all through human history there have been constants. Everyone wants to find love. Everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to find that there's a sense of respect. Everyone wants to give to other people. Everyone wants certain things. However, let me put big qualifications around that. It's not going to express itself the same way as we would. They're not going to use the same language as we would. So when we go into the past, we have to remember the past has its own rights. It has the right to be different from you. And I have read quite a bit of history and also original documents from the past, and I'm always absolutely impressed by how different their world was. And it's not like ours at all. So when we approach something about the past, we need to be very careful. Movies give us a weird illusion about the past. You can see this in the way clothing styles show up. One of the things is that, like for instance, in the 90s, people were very good, 90s and early aughts, people were very good about recreating clothing styles from the past. They've become less good about it in more recent times, so that they make the clothing looks more flimsy. It looks like the wrong colors. It's the wrong fabrics. Even though the people who design these things do know their craft. But something happens where it's more important to send a message from the contemporary period into the past. That to, in a sense, to say, basically they were just like us, doing the same thing. Every woman basically was a feminist in waiting. Every man was basically a toxic male. You know, if you start applying that kind of language to the past, you're wrong. But what movies do, besides doing all of that, they go into the past and they act like, I mean, I hate things like this. You watch a movie. I remember the movie, what was it? Lady Hawk. And I thought that was so strange. You had Matthew Broderick running around spouting off these 1980s kind of ideas about things and irony. And I'm going like, such a person would not have existed. I liked Michelle Pfeiffer in that. I thought she was the center of it. But then you had electronic music, and somehow it didn't work. Or it's like that Knight's Tale, and you've got all this rock music playing. Like a joust would be the same as a Queen song or something. No. No. You have to scrub that out of your head to go into the past. Just as if you want to understand nature, you really got to unplug the stuff to see it, and you've got to be patient to adjust your eyes to the real nature around you. But, for instance, if you remember Braveheart, in Braveheart, Mel Gibson is wearing this weird kind of, to me it was like, oh, okay, early 80s new wave band, English new wave band hairdo. Whereas now there was a movie, was it a recent movie I saw about Vikings, and they've all got these fades on the side with locks. Now, some of that is based on historical reality, but a lot of it is also based on the times. In our times, we have guys walking around with fades and longer hairs and mullety type stuff. So we tend to, for instance, in the 1970s, whenever you saw a movie about the 50s, they never showed people the way they actually dressed in the 50s. So if you watch even a movie as good as American Graffiti, George Lucas's film, which I think that's probably his best film. But if you watch that and you look at the hairstyles, here's what you won't see. And I was conscious enough of the way people looked. I was a young kid, but I was conscious enough of the way people looked in the early 60s to know that there were a lot of guys who still had the butch flat top haircut. And you wouldn't see that in the 70s. Why? Nobody wanted to make an actor go through that, because that was almost seen as like defacing them to put that haircut. You know, American Graffiti was what, about 1973, 74? So no one wanted to look embarrassing. No actor at that time in the 1970s wanted to look embarrassing with a flat crew cut. Now, this wouldn't be an issue by the time you get to the 1990s, because lots of people were now getting their head shaved. They still weren't getting the butch buzz cut from the 50s. They were doing something that was, I mean, now I see it's like guys with bald shaved heads everywhere in history. I don't remember seeing anyone like that in my life growing up. I was born in 1955 until sometime in the 80s. To see someone with completely shaved head and you see the stubble on the side or whatever was just impossible. It took skinheads existing and then that to become spread out further for that to happen. So that after a while, what I used to see is the guy with the comb over. I used to see, or the person who simply, they pushed their hair back. They had a very wide part. I've kind of gotten near that position myself. But they didn't they didn't shave their heads. This was a rare thing. So you go back into the past and you see people with shaved heads. And what I'm pointing out here is that whatever style is contemporary ends up in the movies. Because the actors don't want to be embarrassed by actually having to put on, particularly this is with hairstyles. Hairstyles in the movies are really odd. In the 1960s, you'd see Sophia Loren and El Cid, and she's got some sort of variation on a bouffant kind of teased up hair where this part is setting up higher. And I'm sitting there going like, yeah, that didn't happen. Here's another thing that didn't happen. You look in the past, and in the real past, there were very few periods where women had long, straight hair dangling down their side. Now, women have long hair. We tend to think, oh, that's what a natural woman is. There's no such thing as a natural woman. Every age has its own style. And the style for a very long time always involved putting the hair up and doing stuff like that. Now, you'll watch films set in the 50s or the 40s or the 30s, and a woman will have long, flowing hair. And you go back and look at the actual actresses from that period, they don't. And it's because people didn't. Look at a group photo from any period before the 1960s. And in the Western world, you're not going to see women with long hair. Now you see it everywhere. It too will change. And the way it is, it changes now that it's like all sorts of things are done to that hair to give it that effect. And that's what you'll see in our movies, and that's how we will reinterpret the past. So what I'm basically saying is beware of looking at a movie and thinking that's how the past was. The more you know, the more you can say, oh, that was done really well. There are films that I think are really historically accurate. Maybe I'll make a list of them. Do you want me to do that of films that have a really good sense of history? If you do, let me know. So even someone like Tom Holland, who is an excellent historian, and I really recommend his books, but even he now and then has trouble putting himself in the mind of those in the past, or to apply his historical approach to people from certain periods and attitudes. For instance, I know he is writing a book right now about what happened in the 1960s as far as he wants to show the relationship of Christianity to the idea of the civil rights movement and such. Almost like a second sort of revival of Christianity. And I am absolutely convinced, from what I've heard him talking about, that he will completely or only very briefly mention the Jesus people. That he will look at most of what we see coming from the civil rights movement and not see the Jesus people in reaction to it. I don't want to go into that in too much depth here, but it's because he can't put himself in the place of someone like myself who was alive at the time and felt already by 1970 that a lot of the dreams of the 60s had already died. So because of that, he has very great difficulty of understanding what the Jesus people meant and how that would change society in a very deep way as well. So, and this is not to criticize him, I would be very surprised and interested if he did mention them more. But we will see. So, one of our problems, and this is, I think, a specific problem with our age, is we tend to look at ourselves as being more evolved, a word I really don't like when applied to humanity, more superior. Is anyone more evolved than Shakespeare? Is anyone more evolved than Blaise Pascal? Is anyone more evolved than Leonardo da Vinci? Is anyone more evolved than Dostoevsky? Is anyone more evolved? You see what I'm saying? Now, you could say, well, you're talking about the best people from our times, but we tend to know a lot more. And where is our knowledge now located? It's located on little devices. So we don't actually have it. There's a comedy troupe called Foyle, Arms and Hog out of Ireland. I love these guys. 3 guys. They do really, really funny sketches. And they have one about what happens when Zoomers don't have any internet connection. And how everything they know is like, well, we'll just get Oops to pick us up, but they can't call them. Oh, we want to play chess. Oh, but wait, I don't have the app. And meanwhile, they're knocking over chess pieces. It's just really funny.
Whoa, this place is beautiful.
So remote.
No service on the phone.
No, I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I guess we can just completely shut off here.
Totally, yeah. The Wi-Fi password should be on the fridge.
Got it, the password's cottage23.
Nice one.
Paul?
Yeah?
We got a problem.
What? The password not working?
No, the password's fine, it's just... there's no internet.
No,
He's right, I've got nothing either.
No, me neither.
Maybe a fuse is gone. I can check the box.
You know how to do that?
Oh, it's fine, I can just Google it. Oh no. Oh no.
The rental company said the Wi-Fi is included. I'll email them.
I'm hungry.
I'll order a Deliveroo.
Alright, let's just get out of here. I'll order a taxi.
I need to go for a dump.
Alright, that's it. I'm gonna hike back to the village.
It's 50 kilometers.
I don't care.
Do you know where you're going?
It's fine. I'll just put it into Google Maps. No! We're trapped!
We're gonna die here. Of boredom.
Maybe we could play a game of chess or do a crossword.
Good idea.
Oh no, the app needs internet.
Damn! We can't even listen to music.
Maybe they've got a vinyl player.
All they have is this.
What is it?
I think it existed before vinyls.
Because we tend to think we have reached some sort of pinnacle, that we are better than those microcephalics from the past who were like apes. And, one of the great lies of the modern era is to believe that people in the past thought the world was flat. They didn't. No thinkers, no average person thought that. But we tend to think they did. Just as the Renaissance was called the Renaissance because they said, oh, we're reborn. The culture is reborn. Society is reborn. Now today with our technology, we tend to think we've arrived at some point and how wonderful that is. And yet at the same time, and of course, whenever people talk, if you went to the past, it would be so smelly and people didn't have any hygiene and they didn't know what to do at their time. They didn't have movies. They didn't have little devices to look at. But the truth is, we are not superior to anyone from 500 years ago, to anyone from 1,000 years ago, to anyone from 2,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago, or 5,000 years ago, or maybe 10,000 or 20,000 years ago. Do you understand what I'm saying? So when you look at the past, you have to treat it like a good traveler treats going to a place they have no idea about. They have to learn about the rules of that place. You don't just get on a plane and fly to Japan. You'd better do some homework before you get there, because Japan is a place that has nothing but rules. And they'll give you some grace being a gaijin, a foreigner, but you'd better learn some rules. And it's the same with the past. You better think about, how do these people think that's different from me? How am I misinterpreting it? We also tend to have heroes and villains from the past, and we tend to think that the heroes are the people we think are heroes, and the villains are people we would now think are villains. Whereas in the past, it's really complicated. When I was young, we played cowboys and Indians. And the Indians were often the bad guys. Nowadays, that's like, whoa, you can't play that if you're in, North America or parts of Europe. The further east you go, the more that doesn't matter. But the thing is, we tend to look at the people in the past as being these good and bad guys in the same way that we were. So, nowadays we tend to think, oh, all the Native Americans were really good. Like, I'm sorry. I hate to disillusion you, but there were many tribes that had many dark, violent practices. And, you know, they weren't, for instance, they weren't all just one thing called Native Americans. There's a big deal of difference between a Hopi and a Blackfoot and someone in the Mohawk tribes. Very big difference indeed. And they had different belief structures. They weren't all just like native spirituality. There's a really great movie called Black Robe, and it's about a Jesuit priest being taken up the St. Lawrence Seaway through the lakes to a Huron tribe. And he meets several different types of Native Americans along the way. They all kind of look at him as weird. But one thing that's really interesting is the film doesn't point him out as being the baddie. They show him as being ignorant, but they don't show him as being the bad guy. It's a very good movie. And there's one tribe everyone is afraid of, and that was basically the Mohawks. And you have the Algonquin and the Huron, but they get captured by them at one point. It's just like you're sitting in your seat going, "Oh, it isn't black and white." And even the Mohawks weren't a black and white tribe. I mean, there was subtleties to what they believed. They just happened to have these beliefs that involved, if you want to prove yourself, the use of torture. What can I tell you? Life is difficult. Just as there's not one kind of European or one kind of African or one kind of, South Pacific Islander. So we need to look, like one of the things, like I say, we have heroes and villains. So a lot of Protestants like myself will look in the past and go, Martin Luther, yes, he was a great man. He, translated the Bible into German. He put the 95 Thesis on the wall. He helped to change the world. I'm not going to go into all of what that means, but we run into more problems when we start thinking about his attitude towards the Jews or his attitude towards the peasants in the peasant revolt. So what it is that we tend to think, okay, if you're a good guy, you're a good guy like us. You believe everything that we do. And often the sides switch differently all the time. Things are very complicated. And if you go in with your mentality into the past and think about it, and you act superior, you're going to miss it. You really have to be open to the past being a country unlike our present. We also tend to reject writers and thinkers and artists because they do not conform to our ideas. So, for instance, now, what was it? I saw a video recently of red flag books that girls will say, if a guy has these, he's a red flag person. One of them was Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, and I can kind of get that. But then, the last one of this 10 list, a guy who reads anything by Dostoevsky on his bookshelves. I'm sitting there going like, what? That is just so ridiculous. But that's where we are. We are at a place, like I said at the beginning, we have people now who only pay attention to the present. And some Russian guy trying to investigate the depths of the human soul from the 19th century, how does that relate to someone on TikTok? You tell me. So, but the truth is, it's not until you're willing to open up and realize, okay, T.S. Eliot has great ideas here. He's got some problem areas over here. I'll give you a big clue. Every writer has problem areas. C.S. Lewis has problem areas. G.K. Chesterton has problem areas. So those are people I like. Jacques Ellul, another writer I really like, has problem areas. Owen Barfield has, for me, some serious problem areas. Does that mean I don't learn from them? I learn lots from them. I just learned to realize, okay, I am not a universalist. Jacques Ellul was. I just at that point go, Jacques, we disagree here. I believe in judgment. And also there's the idea of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So we think in these left-right terms. We think, for instance, one of the ways this is expressed, Hitler, the Austrian dictator who took over Germany, did not like modern art. He considered modern art to be terrible and degenerate. Therefore, all modern art is good if you don't like Hitler. And if you have any problems with it, you must be a Nazi. Do you see? This is this weird kind of logic we have. And I've often seen this. Anyone who starts to question, like, why is it that modern art leads to a kind of meaninglessness? And then suddenly they're like, uh-oh, what's Byrne doing? Why is he saying this stuff? Well, it's not because I'm a National Socialist. I hate that. I hate the Nazis. But it's because I have my own eyes. I can do my own research. I've been thinking about modernism for quite a while. There are aspects of it I like. I appreciate it more than I did now than I did 20 years ago. But there are also aspects that are really troubling to me. I'm really troubled by the developments in architecture. How did we end up in this dead, sterile environment that so many cities have become? I am really troubled by the emptying of meaning on almost a existential level. And I've got tons of problems with postmodern ideas as well, and postmodern art. So yeah, I can question art all day long and never be someone from the Third Reich. I don't like that kind of far-right talk. And so what I'm saying is, if you want to understand the past, you'd better learn to develop some thinking skills, and thinking skills that will help you. If you react with a knee jerk when someone says something, then you got a problem. If you can't, like there's a lot of people today, they hear the word Trump and they're, and it's just like, there's nothing Trump will ever do is good. Well, that's a problem, because like I say, you can't say that everything that a person does is bad. But it's the same with people, a couple of years ago, you hear Biden, you go like, it doesn't matter. I hate partisan politics, and I hate what it does to our minds, and I hate propaganda. And the knee-jerk is one of the surest signs you've been propagandized. If you hear a name like Putin and go, or Elon Musk and go, or Keir Starmer and go, or Trudeau, Macron, Xi Jinping, if you react like that, it means for that moment your mind is being fried and you can no longer think seriously. And when I meet that person in conversation or online, nothing they say after that initial sense of like, I hate this person kind of thing, I hate everything this person says, nothing they say after that to me is worth thinking about, because they are so reactive and so blinded by their own rage and their own propaganda that they can't see. They can't try to parse out what would be good, what would be bad. They can't see the future. They can only see their own ideas. And if we go into the past looking at that, one of the big problems that they had in Germany in the 1940s is they were looking back at Rome, trying to reduplicate what Rome was in the 20th century. Did anyone mention that would probably be a bad idea? That's the problems when you misunderstand history. And so let me just end by saying this. I'm going to just end with a quote from Owen Barfield. This is from his book, Saving the Appearances, A Study in Idolatry. And I would say this, a lot of my thoughts have been shaped by Owen Barfield, particularly this book, and also shaped by C.S. Lewis, The Discarded Image, and shaped by Hans Ruckmacher's ideas. Go listen to his What is Reality lecture that I have on my channel, and Jacques Ellul, among others. So, this is what Owen Barfield said about looking back. He says, before the scientific revolution, man did not feel himself to be isolated in his skin from the world outside to the same degree that we do. He was integrated, he was mortized, is the word he used, into it. Each part of him was being united to a different part of it by some invisible thread. So in other words, a person felt completely connected to everything around them. In relationship to his environment, the man of the Middle Ages was rather less like an island and rather more like an embryo. Do you get that? We are like islands. We have this super strong, I would say, idolatrous sense of the self. Many people will say, I don't believe in anything anymore. I just believe in myself. To which I'm going like, well, that's purest, unadulterated bullshit. Anything you say after that, I'm going to have problems with. Because you know what? I'm not you. Therefore, you can't believe in me. Why should I believe in you? I believe in you to the degree you're a human being. But if you say you are the definer of all reality, you have a big problem. But I think a lot of people watching this channel are not in that condition. Nevertheless, I think we are all tempted to read the past as if it was like us. As if a person in ancient Rome would be giddy like a modern geek collecting Spider-Man memorabilia when they would collect little, statuettes and such, which they would not be. That's not the reason they have little statuettes. So we are, to understand anything or to understand anyone else, and this is true, if you want to love someone, you have to see them as separate from you, looking out of the world through their own eyes, but there is a way for you to connect. And it involves this really mysterious thing called listening. Just as looking in the past involves this really serious thing called reflection and listening and not jumping to the gun. Although, I will admit, and I've had this happen, there have been moments when I start reading something from the past, I'm just like, whoa, this isn't good. And a lot of times it may not be. There's a lot of crime in the past. There's really dark stuff in the past. Sometimes much darker than anything we have. But there's sometimes much greater joy than anything we have as well. Okay, do you get it? If not, come back next time. I'm going to deal with books I would recommend from history to help you develop a sense. You need to have a good sense of history so you can go to a movie and say, oh, this is really good, except they got this whole thing wrong there, or the costumes were wrong there. You need to develop that so that you're not conditioned by the contemporary world, so that you have more access to more of reality. Okay, this is Bern from Tbilisi, Georgia. Have you looked that up on a map yet? Do you know where I am? Really? Do that now. Make a note. Go look up Tbilisi, Georgia. And saying, hey, thanks for listening. I really appreciate the time that you have spent. If you've gotten this far and you want to make a note, let's use the word, just put the word Barfield in there. Just mention Barfield in some way. Just say, oh, I like the quote by Barfield. Whatever. Nakwamdis and Droebit, we will meet again.
A people without history is not redeemed from time. For history is a pattern of timeless moments.
Oh my God!
It took nearly 4.5 years to build the World Trade Center South Tower. But at 9:59 a.m. on September 11th, 2001, it only took 12 seconds for the 110-story building to fall. just over 30 minutes after the South Tower collapsed, while firefighters were still inside evacuating people from the North Tower came crashing down.
Heard a rumble. I thought there was some more jets coming in, and I looked up and the North Tower was starting to collapse. Turned around, ran as far north as I could, realized I wasn't going to outrun this building, dove under a rig, waited till the debris had cleared. Luckily enough, the rig survived the collapse.